Okay, video number 2, the home screen and what you can do with your single finger. Now, the home screen of the iPhone is a series of apps that you can open. The phone comes with a number of apps, of course, and you can always download many, many more. The App Store is full of thousands of apps. Visually, the apps are displayed on your home screen as a series of icons. So each app has a little picture associated with it, a bit like a Windows desktop, but VoiceOver announces the name of each as you come to it. They're in a grid layout, so rows and columns, and the screen is pageable, which means that you can have more than one page of apps. So in the first video, we talked about the middle part of your screen often being fluid and dynamic and changing. And likewise, with the home screen, if you've got more apps than will fit on a single page, you end up with another page of apps that you can access. There is a status bar at the top of your screen, as always, or at least is very common. And at the bottom, there is a series of apps which iPhone calls the dock. And these are apps that stay put no matter what page you're on. So if, like me, you happen to have 8 pages of apps, which is quite a lot, the number of apps that you access more often, more regularly on the iPhone, the ones that you want to use all the time, if you like, are accessible by putting them in the dock, and they stay there. So even if you're on page 3 or 4, your docked apps, I should say, remain the same. So the home screen is a bit like the iPhone desktop or start menu in that it's where you launch things from and where you come back to whenever you've pressed home or made the home gesture. When you unlock your phone for the first time, it's also where you land up. So if I just press my unlock,
11:07.
That's the time. If I put my thumb on my touch sensor,
Rec up.
so you heard a noise there. That sort of high-pitched trilling sound indicates that the screen on my phone has changed, and the phone said rec up. Rec up is the first app on my screen. So it's the VoiceOver focus is on the very top left of that series of icons. And if I try flicking to the left with one finger, which is the first gesture people learn, you'll find I can't go anywhere.
Rec up, rec up, rec up, rec up.
It makes a noise and says the same thing over and over again because I'm at the left edge of my list of apps. So now we've introduced our first one finger gesture, the flick. Or swipe. Apple calls it swipe. Most people refer to it as flicking, so it sort of varies. So flicking left and right moves your focus around the screen. Sighted people don't need a focus. They can see the whole series of apps on this page at a given glance. Whereas we, as VoiceOver users, need the VoiceOver to be on something specific before we can do anything with it. They could just tap on rec up if they wanted to open it. We couldn't do that because we might not know where it is or what it was. Our act of touching something can't trigger it because we need to touch to explore. So we have this concept of a cursor, and that tells the screen reader VoiceOver where we are in the system at any given point. And our single finger, flick left or right, moves that cursor around. So next to my rec up app, I have my calendar.
Monday, January 25th. 4 new notifications.
Next to that, I have my clock.
11:09.
Next to that, what do I have?
Drafts 4.
A drafts app, which is a writing app. And if I flick once more,
Threema. 2 new items.
I've got Threema, which is a social media networking app. Now, I happen to know that Threema is physically directly beneath my rec up. It's on the second. If we listen to this,
Row 2, column 1, home. Page 1 of 8.
it's on the
Top of
second
screen.
row.
Double tap to open.
So there are 4 icons in the top row. There's my rec up, my calendar, my clock, and I forgot the 4th one already.
Drafts 4.
My drafts, there we go. And then beneath that, beneath the rec up is the Threema.
Threema.
Beneath the calendar is
Messages.
the messaging app. Beneath the clock
Inspire.
is my Inspire, that's my thermostat. And beneath my drafts
WhatsApp.
is WhatsApp. So yes, I could flick all the way through my screen. What if I wanted to get to my phone? The phone, to make a phone call, is the very, very bottom left app in my dock. And as we know, the dock is at the bottom of the screen. So you can flick left and right, but it's often far more effective to touch. If I touch the screen with one finger just at the very bottom left edge,
Dock. Phone.
it says dock and phone. So by touching the screen with one finger, I have jumped the cursor from flicking left and right through its orderly progress along the screen to the exact spot under my finger. If I want to go back to my calendar, I will touch now. I know that there's a status bar on the top of the screen. I know the very leftmost icon on my screen is my rec up. So I want to go not quite the top, not quite the left. Let's see if I can hit it.
Monday, January 25th.
Look at that.
4 new notifications.
So by knowing your screen layout, by knowing where things are on your screen, you can be very much more productive. And even if I miss slightly, I'm closer. So if I want to go from the phone to the clock and I touch the calendar by accident, I know I've just got to flick once to the right. So learning your home screen layout will be very important to you. I've arranged the apps on mine, for example, such that I know WhatsApp is sort of on the top right-hand side.
WhatsApp.
And I can get there quite easily just by touching the part of the screen I need to touch. And this is something that you'll learn with practice. A one-finger flick up and down. We've covered left to right. What happens when you flick your finger up and down? Well, that depends on your rotor setting. And we'll talk about the rotor in a whole separate video. So leave this for now. And we will come to rotor. It's very important, but don't worry about it. So you can only move your finger in 4 directions. You can move left, right, up or down. You can touch. We've just discussed touch, because by touching with one finger, you jump the cursor to the part of the screen that your finger is on. And remember that by flicking with your finger left and right, you move through the elements on the screen. Now, it's important to point out that sometimes the voiceover cursor that we move by flicking left and right loses its way. Sometimes it's necessary to touch a point on the screen to give the cursor a bit of input as to where you want to be. And this is especially useful in apps that have a lot of scrollability. Let's imagine you're in a calendar view. Let's go to the calendar. Why not?
Monday, January 25th.
So let's introduce a new gesture here called the double tap. Touching on the calendar once selects the calendar. If you could see my screen at the moment, which you can't because I haven't shared it, but never mind, you would see there's a highlight on the calendar because we've told VoiceOver that we want to touch it. So a double tap is the next gesture you have to learn, and that is the equivalent of a sighted person's single tap. They don't need to put their focus on anything in particular, remember, because they can see it all. So they would simply have to tap or touch on the calendar once to open it. We have to do a double tap. Now, if you are an older person or you have physical disabilities that make it hard for you to double tap fast enough, there is a setting in the accessibility options to reduce the time a double tap is recognized or increase it. So by default, you have to tap the screen twice within 0.2 seconds. So that's a fifth of a second you have in which not just to touch the screen once, but to double tap. That speed is what most people tend to go for. Let's do that now.
Calendar 2021. Back button.
Okay. So you heard some new sounds there. You heard my finger double tap the screen. You heard the screen change noise. You heard VoiceOver say back button. And you remember I told you in the last video, if you listened, that the back button is often the first thing on a new screen. And so what's happened here is the home screen's gone. We're in a different app, and we are able. Let's start flicking, shall we? Let's see what happens.
List button. Search button. Add button.
So these are all buttons. List, search, and add, part of the calendar.
January 2021. Heading.
January 2021, that's a heading. Let's flick again.
Friday, January 1st. 8 events. Saturday, January 2nd. 2 events. Sunday, January 3rd. No events. But Monday, January 4th. 12 events. Button.
So as you can hear, I've got a very busy life. Luckily, Sundays are quite quiet. What happens if I want to get to the last Sunday in January? That's 30 odd flicks. That's crazy. But of course, we don't need to do that because we know several things, don't we? We've talked about. We know, or we can presume at least, that there are some controls at the bottom of the window here, the screen, which are static. So we could touch one of those and then flick left. Let's see what happens when we do that. So I'm going to touch, like I touched the phone. That dock is now gone because we're off the home screen. We're in an app, and one of the buttons along the bottom of the screen is today.
Toolbar, today, button.
And it said we're in the toolbar, which indicates it's a non-scrollable part of the screen. So if I flick left now,
Sunday, February 14th, 1 event, button.
There we go. So we have got sort of 6 weeks worth of grid on the screen. and it's taken us to February. But again, to get back to the end of January,
Monday, February 1st, February 2021, heading, Sunday, January 31st, no events, button.
and what is that on the screen? Let's see what we can see here.
December 28th.
It doesn't give us much information. It says that
events on this day.
Okay, we've got some information here about double tapping, but that's not very good. So what you need to know about the calendar is the dates are arranged as a calendar would be on paper, which means that your Sundays go down the right-hand column of the screen. So if I touch my finger to the screen near the top on the right-hand edge,
Sunday, January 3rd, no events, button.
And if I just squeeze my finger there and slide it down,
Sunday, January 10th, no events,
and again,
button. Sunday, January 17th, no events, button.
So I know that those are the Sundays. I'm sliding my finger around the screen and my cursor is jumping around to match me. So rather than flicking through all those days, I'm able to, find the bit I want. And of course I can double tap on any of those that I might need to. So that is the limit of really what you can do with one finger. You can flick up and down, left and right. We'll talk about the up and down bit next time. You can tap or touch once. You can hold your finger on something and drag it around to find other things. Of course, you can double tap to open an app. That's a very common gesture. You'll make a lot of that. The only other thing, which is a bit esoteric, but it's worth knowing about, is double tapping and holding. And there are a couple of reasons you'll want to do this. So, first and foremost, double tap and hold is used as our equivalent of as a sighted person's tap and hold. Remember, we have to do a double tap for their single tap. So that's why it's called a double tap and hold, not just a tap and hold. And there are two purposes for double tapping and holding. One is it's a bit like a right click option. Lots of different apps have parts of the screen where you can double tap and hold things to bring up extra menus. And you can also double tap and hold items on the home screen, and they will offer you extras. So for example, rather than opening up the calendar app and choosing the new event button, I could have double tap and held on the calendar item on the home screen and it would have brought up a little menu where new event was an option. So that's something to bear in mind. The second type of double tap and hold action you'll need to perform, which is rare but does come up sometimes, is when you want to drag something around the screen. So by double tapping and holding on it, you are getting a grip on it, and you are effectively enable in certain apps to rearrange items. So it may be that, for example, in your favorite contacts, you want to organize them differently. So you want different people at the top or the bottom. You can literally drag them around the screen to put them in the order you want. Same with your home screen. You can drag items around the screen. If you want your clock to be before rather than after your calendar, you can move it around. And this is where the double tap and hold gesture comes in, because it lets you get a grip on something and move it around the screen. So all of this is possible with one finger. And there is a shortcut as well. A one finger triple tap is the same as a double tap and hold, or a long press as the iPhone calls it. And that is useful as well in certain situations. And as we look at certain apps in our series of videos, we'll come at those. So the important takeaways from this video are that you can flick left and right between apps or items on the screen. You can double tap to activate an item. You can touch anywhere on the screen to explore. And you can double tap and hold your finger down to bring up a contextual menu. Depending on what you're touching, you'll get a different thing each time. Or you can double tap and hold your finger on the screen to drag things around where necessary. It doesn't happen very often. I can count on one hand the number of times I've dragged, even with that dragging finger taken away. But there are times when it's useful to know about. But the important thing is the cursor, the idea that you can move around, choose apps or items, and double tap them. And hopefully that's given you a good start. We'll move on to two fingers in the next video.